Happy Saturday. Welcome to Scoop World Order. Justin Fry and Ryan Day have bagged a superstar tackle, got with a lot of upside. Carter Lowe is committing to Ohio State shortly. We're going to break his film down. We have all of his clips from his last 2 years, so we're going to go through that. A lot of portal buzz with Ohio State. So again, we're going to be grinding through some of that, and we're going to take your questions as well. So get those super chats fired up. As always, we appreciate you guys so much. If you guys enjoy this show, fire up those super chats, get those questions rolling for us. The basketball Bucks are playing tonight, so we're going to knock this thing out. If you guys enjoy this podcast, please click the like button. Also click subscribe, and also click that little alert bell. That little alert bell lets you know when we go live. Usually on the weekends, we go a little bit early. Tomorrow we will go before Championship Sunday kicks off, so look for that around mid-afternoon. Before the two huge AFC and NFC championship games kick off. So we appreciate you guys as always. Going to get into this real quick. Nevada, we're landing a kid who's right on the verge of being a 5-star tackle, a kid who's got very light feet, a kid who's tall, angular. He's a really good player. I broke him down with Orlando Pace. Orlando really liked him. I don't know what better stamp you could get than Orlando Pace saying that you're a good tackle. But Carter Lowe is that out of Toledo Whitmer. He is a Buckeye. Your thoughts on this? Because I think it's going to be, this is the kind of kid you need to restock that tackle room. Obviously, Josh Fryer is the guy who's more of a guard. I think that this is a huge get for Justin Fry. Your thoughts on Carter Lowe becoming a Buckeye?
Well, I think for Ohio State, look, it's important. I've always said that I would go to war with just kids from Ohio on the offensive line and just make good at it. And I've always believed that. I believe that Ohio turns out the best linemen. And, you look at our last national championship team, it was 5 kids from Ohio on the offensive line. So keeping the best Ohio offensive linemen in state for me is paramount. It's job number one for whoever the position coach is at Ohio State. And so for Ohio State, I think Ohio State's done a great job on Carter. It's done a great job building that relationship. And, so for me personally, this is a guilty pleasure because I love Ohio offensive linemen, and this is the best Ohio offensive lineman in the class. And then the fact that he's not an interior guy, that he's a tackle, just makes it double important, double the fun. So a great job by Justin Fry and the offensive staff, and a big get, and excited to have him make it public and being part of the Ohio State family. Really good day for Ohio State.
Now, Nevada, a lot has been made about, in the past, there's been some exceptionally dumb commentary about, us not getting every Ohio lineman, with past offensive line coaches. I think that a lot of these guys are kind of at the mercy of the kids' whims, and also, what is the talent level in Ohio? Obviously, when you have a kid like Paris Johnson, who's the best tackle probably in the last 3-4 years, 5 years to come out, he's right down in Cincinnati. You got a great relationship with Mom. You get him. But I think that the talent drain in Ohio has been substantial. So, it's a lot harder to get top-notch offensive linemen from the state. But this is a kid, he's a 6'6" kid. He's angular. He's tall. He's a left tackle. He's got great footwork. He's got great ankle flexion. He's got kind of everything you need in a tackle to be successful at the next level. But how much of it is, with recruiting, again, I get my theory. I've said it a million times, and people can laugh at me, but I just look at the numbers. I look at where guys are from. How much of the fact that Ohio has got a couple of really good offensive line classes coming up, how much does that buoy Justin Fry's recruiting versus the national? Because I think going after national tackles is very difficult. Now, Greg Suwara did an incredible job landing a guy like Nick Petitford out of Tampa. Donnie Jackson was a tackle out of Texas. Luke Whippler obviously was a center out of Jersey. DeWand was a guy. It's funny because people, they get star obsessive when they look at the star rankings coming out of high school, and they say, "Oh, we took this. We took all these 3 stars and 3-star heaven," and statements that are frankly ignorant. But DeWand, if you go back and re-rank him, he ends up being a 5-star, top 5, maybe top 3, maybe the number 1 tackle in his entire class. How much of it is you're kind of at the mercy of the talent that's in the state of Ohio versus recruiting ability? Again, this is something that we've talked about ad nauseum, but I feel like if you have a good crop of offensive linemen, especially tackles in the state of Ohio, then magically you can be viewed as a better recruiter versus if there's a poor crop and it's mostly interior guys, or maybe, you lose a guy like a Jackson Carman, you're viewed as an inferior recruiter. What are your thoughts on that? Because I think that it's kind of like a dice roll sometimes when you're, again, big guys. And again, you guys can go do the research, go look at Bama, go look at Georgia, go look at LSU. Where do their big guys come from? Generally pretty close to campus, generally within 3-4 hours of campus. And that's both defensive linemen, offensive linemen. Do you think that Justin Fry is going to benefit the next few years from there being some really good tackles, in the state of Ohio?
Well, look, first of all, your opinion on offensive linemen is worth about 87,000 billion percent more than my opinion. But my opinion might be a little bit different than yours. I view the offensive line position as a position where development is more important than just about anything. And I think that's why these guys develop later. I mean, you've talked many times, making the great point about Corey Linsley didn't start a game until his fourth year in the
Yeah.
program at Ohio
Oh.
State. And we've got so many guys that are, that weren't really productive until their third year, their fourth year, maybe even their fifth year. And so for me, I just think that getting kids from Ohio or getting kids from the area, it, to me, it's important because I think they're more apt to stay with the program. They're less apt to transfer out. Not that they wouldn't, but they're more apt to maybe stay in there, hang in there, go through the development process, and maybe develop into good ones. But clearly, when you have a good crop in state, it makes it easier. And when you don't have a good crop in state, you have to go out of the market, and that's tough business to go. Because as you've said many times, the big guys are their mama's boys, they're homebodies, like to stay home. So the fact that we were able to get Nick Petit Frere, Donnie Jackson, Harry Miller, Luke Whippler, I mean, just go on and on and on. There's these big, terrific contributing offensive linemen from out of state. Was really amazing, an amazing run. But for now, like I said, get the best big guys in the state, sprinkle in out of state talent when you can, but then develop them. You got to, it's a development game from my perspective on the offensive line, and that really falls down on the coaching and the offenses have to develop these big guys because you've got the raw ability is clearly there with a bunch of guys in the room. You just got to develop talent, get them to be a cohesive unit, and then you go to war.
Yeah, and I think that, people, they're about instant gratification, again, especially with offensive line recruiting. If a kid doesn't play by his second year, he's a bust, process him out, get him out of the program. But like Jack Buhort didn't do much till his third year. Norwell played year two. I think he started maybe one game as a freshman, like where he was a fill-in for a game. I think in 2010, JB Shugarts was hurt, and Norwell played one game at right tackle. And I only remember this because I graded the film against Purdue. Now, Andrew Norwell at one point was the highest paid guard in the entire National Football League. He was the guy that went undrafted because even the NFL draft community, scouts, GMs are dumb. They're stupid. They ignored his film where he was exceptional. He was first team All Big Ten as a guard, and they looked at his 3-cone drill and his 40 and how stiff he was. And he wasn't the most poignant kid in the world, but he was kind of like a Viking warrior monster. That's the first guy you want. If you're going into like a battle, that's the first guy you want is Andrew Norwell. But, he wasn't pretty. He didn't look good running around in shorts and a t-shirt. But when you put the film on, man, I mean, he was nasty and really good versus some really good D tackles in the Big Ten. But his freshman year, I remember he started against Purdue, and they had a guy named Ryan Kerrigan, who was a first-round pick, and I thought Ryan Kerrigan was better than J.J. Watt. Now, again, that's a massive miss by me. J.J. Watt's a first-ballot Hall of Famer. Ryan Kerrigan has no chance of making the Hall of Fame, but Ryan Kerrigan was a very, very advanced pass rusher, and he was very, very good. And he was a guy that we literally couldn't touch for the entire game. Neither tackle, Mike Adams and Norwell couldn't touch this kid, and he was embarrassing our guys. And Mike Adams' his junior year, I thought if he had left, he'd have been a first-round pick. Now, second year, his last year he comes back, he's not as dedicated, he's not focused, and he frankly didn't have the year that I expected him to have. So he ended up, falling to the second round just because he was so talented, 6'7", light feet, really good athlete. But he just didn't put it together the way he needed to because he wasn't focused. But his junior year when he was hungry and he was a first year starter, he was exceptional. And, I think that, when you're evaluating these guys, you really have to look at their upside, their motor, their technique. Like Carter Lowe is very advanced technically. You can tell he's been very well coached at Toledo Whitmer. He's a guy that, you look at his footwork, it's there. You look at his ability to redirect. And again, something I stress to people is when you're watching tape of a high school offensive tackle, they're generally not going against like a big. There might be one game a year where they see a Big Ten guy or an SEC guy or a guy who's like an elite level guy, because that's not how high school works, especially in Ohio. He might play one or two Division I guys a year, so you have to see, does he dominate inferior competition, and Carter Lowe does. And again, I've got some. This is his junior year highlight tape, so I'm going to run this real quick, but you have to, when you're evaluating these guys, you got to look at movement skills, you got to look at finish, you got to look at nasty, you got to look at all that. And when the NFL draft comes around, and again, evaluating offensive line is the hardest position in the entire draft to evaluate, or in recruiting. You'll see guys that are from like Joe Alt. Joe Alt went to Notre Dame. Obviously, Notre Dame had Harry Hiestand. They have Joe Rudolph. They have an exceptional offensive line program there. Really physical outfit. Like we played those guys, and those guys are very well coached. They play very hard. But Joe Alt coming out of Minnesota was a 3-star project type guy, and he developed into a superstar. And he's got great bloodlines. His dad was an NFL guy for a long time. But sometimes you have to look at upside, and you have to take a guy who's a tight end and turn him into a tackle, or take him as a D tackle in high school and turn him into an offensive guard. So there's a lot of switching around in development that comes at the position, and that's where coaching comes into play. That's where Mickey Marotti comes into play. And you're not always getting like a polished guy like a Paris Johnson. You're getting a DeJuan Jones. DeJuan was a basketball player, wanted to be a college basketball player, big kid, kind of fat. Got to get him in shape. Got to get his technique down. Got to get his kick slide down so he can pass protect. And you got to get him focused on playing football, because he was a basketball player for the first couple years in the program. But, guys like Ryan Day, guys like Greg Suar saw the athleticism. They saw the flashes, Mickey Marotti, and they just kept working with him. They kept getting him in shape. They kept grinding him. And, the kid turned into a future Pro Bowler in the NFL, and it's because sometimes you got to take a look at a guy who's a project, who's 6'8" and weighs 380, and you got to get him down to 360 and keep him off, tell him to put the spoon down and stay in shape and whatever. But like DeJuan can make as much money as he wants in the NFL because of Mickey Marotti and Greg Studwara and his last year with Justin Fry. And that's what you have to do with the offensive line. Because again, most of these kids are not finished products. Most of these kids, Carter Lowe is a lot closer to being a finished product. It's a lot closer to being Paris Johnson than he is DeJuan. DeJuan was a big project, and stud rolled the dice on him, and he came up, double aces, in the Texas Hold'em game. So, but I'm just like, I'm excited about this kid. Again, got a big upside. Justin and Ryan Day went and saw him on Friday. He's been at every major recruiting day for Ohio State. So it was kind of a cinch. And honestly, I love kids like this that want to get it done early and become leaders of the class. Nevada, talk a little bit about some of the guys that have committed early, because some of these guys like to wait around till summer, wait around till August. But, when you commit in January, you basically become like a de facto leader of the recruiting class. Talk a little bit about what that does for Carter Lowe as a leader, as he tries to gather more talent around him.
Yeah, well, I think it says a lot about the kid. I think, we talk about Ohio State traditionally not doing well at the end of the recruiting cycle. And I've always said it's because those types of kids, the kids that are kind of waiting to the very end, generally, not always, but generally don't break our way because maybe they've got a little bit of look at me. Whereas a guy like this is clearly all about ball. He wants to get it over. He wants to get his spot, and then he wants to go build the class and help do it, be a leader. I mean, we've talked about Jack Sawyer. Jack Sawyer, one of the top 5 players in the country, consensus 5-star guy. He commits early, and everybody kind of forgets about him. I mean, if he'd have waited to the last day, then people would have been lining up on the ledge, and it would have been like one of the great recruiting stories of all time. But he kind of buried the lead by committing early, and those are the kids that I'm the most grateful to, because it enables Ohio State to kind of build around them, build those classes. And when you have a big guy like that the best offensive linemen in the state, committing to Ohio State. And Toledo, too. Toledo's a tough area for Ohio State. Always has been. There's always been some really, fierce recruiting battles up there. Uh, I just can't emphasize enough how big this one is and how excited I am to see this guy become a Buckeye.
Yeah, I think that you get a little bonus points if you're Justin Fry and you go into Toledo, because it is, there's a lot of Michigan territory up there, and Whitmer hasn't always been a slam dunk for Ohio State. I think Kevin Koger went there. Like, we've lost some guys from Whitmer up to Michigan, but I just think that Ryan Day and the direction of the program versus the indecision of Michigan with the sanctions, with a new coach. Again, I think something that hurts Carter Lowe is, they acted like it was an Ohio State Michigan battle, but like Michigan doesn't even have an offensive line coach yet, unless he hired him in the last hour. Sherrod Moore was the line coach. He's the head coach now, so he's got to go fill his staff out. And plus, a lot of his staff might not be retained. So I think that's something that Ryan and Justin Fry have got to take big advantage of, is the fact that there's looming sanctions. Again, like if I'm recruiting against Michigan, I'm saying, look, this is something that could get real hairy, and I don't think you want to be a part of it, versus Ohio State, where, we've got NIL on lockdown. The roster is really strong. The culture is really strong. Again, you can remember that Michigan won a national championship last year, but, is anybody, buying more stock in Michigan right now than Ohio State? I don't think so. I mean, unless you're crazy. Michigan's a sinking ship at this point. And again, the thing I point to is that the most Michigan man of all time, Jim Harbaugh, who grew up as a ball boy at Michigan, who played for Bo Schembechler, who just won 15-0, won a national championship, just flew the coop as fast as possible. So again, I look at the trajectory of the O-line room. Again, this is a huge ad for us. Restocking the tackles. And again, I think that in the next 3 years, there's some really good tackles coming up. There's a kid at Hoban that's really good, kid at Avon Lake that's really good. And this will be really good for Justin Fry. And then if we can go snag a national guy, a David Saunders or somebody like that, then that's just gravy on top of everything else. So we got a super chat. I'm going to knock this thing out real quick. Let me switch this video. Himashu S, thank you for the 5. Just found y'all. Love the good stuff. Have a throwback question. What happened during the 06 title game versus Florida? Were they that much better? They were a team that was superbly coached by Urban Meyer and staff. They played an outstanding game. We kind of had like our Cotton Bowl moment where our best player broke his leg on the first play of the game with Teddy. So that kind of killed us. Now, again, I take nothing away from Florida. Florida was outstanding that night. We weren't. And, as a guy that has lost 2 national championship games, I tell people, I'm like, look, when you get it to that level of competition, the margin for error is so small and so thin that you can't afford to play dumb. We had bad penalties, personal fouls, we had turnovers, we didn't get it on 4th down in our own territory. Like, when you do that versus a real team, you're done. You have no chance. And again, it's kind of like the Michigan game this year. We go up to Michigan. It's the talent difference is razor thin. Could go either way. And we basically throw a pick 6 to start the game with Kyle McCord. He gets picked up by Will Johnson, runs it back. Like, when you play teams with equal talent, you can't make mistakes. It's impossible. And the problem with Ohio State is 99% of the games you play, you have better players in. So, if you could make some mistakes and still just out talent people, but when you play real teams like Georgia, you can't miss a field goal against a team like Georgia. You can't screw up a fake punt against Georgia or Michigan or Bama. If you do that, you're going to get embarrassed and you're going to lose. And that happened to us in 06. It happened to us in 07 versus LSU when we had 5 personal fouls. We had a punt block that was wide open and we roughed the punter. We dropped a touchdown pass. We had a false start in the red zone. And again, I only know that because it just haunts you, because you don't get those opportunities often in life, and we blew it. So, again, that's nothing against anything, but that's just football. When you get into those games where it's razor thin and the talent is that close, you can't make mistakes. And we made too many mistakes, and Florida didn't. Florida played a flawless game, and we played our worst game of the season, and it was ugly. Nevada, the offensive line is something that is a constant point of conjecture amongst our fan base. How are you feeling about the 24 offensive line? Because I think that we've got a chance to be really good on the O line. I think that we got four guys back. Again, you have to remember in college football, you're always churning some guys. There's always going to be some guys going to the league, guys graduating. But if you look from left to right, with Josh Simmons at left tackle, you look at Donnie coming back. Donnie's on every first team All American list. I think Josh Simmons could be an All Big Ten guy. You get your center from Bama coming in. You've got the right guard could be Josh Fryer or maybe Carson Hinsman, and then right tackle could be Josh Fryer or Luke Montgomery, George Fitzpatrick, Tigre Tishkabola. Like I feel like that is a really competitive room. I think it's a room that is going to have the heat turned up on them, frankly, because when you look around the other rooms, if you walk down the hallway in the Woody Hayes, the quarterback room is loaded, the running back room is loaded, the tight end room. They're not loaded, but like tight end is probably the least important position on the field. Wide receiver room, absolutely loaded. And I think a lot of fans and Ryan Day and a lot of people that are important think that, this season will go as far as the O-line takes us. How are you feeling about the offensive line at this moment in time in 2024?
Well, you just look, you've got five guys that started 14 or more games last year for either Ohio State or Alabama, coming back on the offensive line. And, I'm not sure what the configuration is going to be. I'm not sure where Fryer's going to end up, where they're going to play Hinsman, who's going to be the right tackle, if Fryer's not at right tackle. But, I love the options. I love the fact that you've got Bill O'Brien there to kind of help out and kind of instill the fire, bring the heat from an offensive coordinator's position. I think that's going to be the big wild card for the offensive line this year, because we didn't have that last year. We didn't have an offensive coordinator last year. We had Ryan Day trying to be the offensive coordinator, the quarterback coach, and the head coach of the football team. And now we've got Bill O'Brien, and I think that's going to make just an absolutely gigantic. I think it's going to be one of those things that the difference is going to be so profound that we're at the end of the year, we're all going to look at each other and go, how in the world did we ever operate without an offensive coordinator? How in the world did we ever think that was a good idea? And we've all had those things in life where we've kind of gone one way and then you do it a new way and you're like, wow, I can't believe I ever did it that old way for that long. I think that's going to be the story of the offensive line for 2024. But it's an embarrassingly deep Ohio State team right now at every position on the field. And I think the offensive line battles are going to be absolutely fierce because you've got so many talented guys, so many talented, experienced guys. And I think you're going to have a lot of options for Justin Fry to play around with, and I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see what Justin does on the right side of the line. Again, with Josh Fryer, you have this kind of debate where do you do what's for the best for the team or what's best for Josh? And again, it really comes down to what are our options at right tackle between Luke, George Fitzpatrick, and Tigre. Can they, and I've said this before, and it'll be ad nauseum, but can they pass protect well enough to run this offense? Because Josh Fryer was a good pass protector last year. Now people will be like, oh, he stunk, whatever. And again, I always go back to, well, he was first team All Big Ten as a tackle last year. So as much as you guys want to hate on the kid, like go look that up. It's pretty good to be first team All Big Ten. But I know he wants to be a guard. I know he wants to put out guard film for the NFL, try to heighten his draft stock. Like I totally get that. But again, I think that, the run that we're about to go on in the next few years at Ohio State, especially with Michigan being kind of in the doldrums, is going to be spectacular. I mean, Sam Greer is a really good player. Max Riley, really good player. Like we've got some really good tackles coming up in Ohio. And we're still going to be players for national guys. Cause again, we've gotten Caleb Downs, which again, you're like, well, it's a safety, whatever. But like that sent shockwaves across college football nationally. People are like, wow, that kid, he left, a nice deal at Georgia. Ohio State's NIL game is strong. So again, like, we're not losing many, unless someone just gets offered obnoxious money and it's not in our budget, like Justin Scott, we're not losing many NIL deals anymore, which is amazing. Because again, we already have a strong roster. And the thing is about high school recruiting is like, I feel like Ryan Day and Mark Pantoni and the collectives are getting more excited about getting proven talent for their NIL dollars. Guys like Caleb Downs, guys like Will Howard, guys like Quinshon Judkins, than just spending money on a high school kid who you're not sure that can play at the college level. And again, I think that's the correct move. Now that you can actually, again, it's kind of like in the NFL, would you rather pay for a free agent or would you draft a guy, first overall in the draft when, a free agent in the NFL is a guy who's a known commodity. He's done well in the league. You kind of know that he can play at that level versus a college kid who you don't know if he can handle getting a huge signing bonus and moving to a new city and is he going to be productive? So, again, I think that the line will be good. And I also think that, if there's someone compelling when the spring transfer portal opens up, that we might go after him. Because again, Ryan Day at this point knows that this is a make or break season. And again, I think Ryan Day is a fabulous coach. I think he's the best coach to lead Ohio State, but he is loading up for bear right now. Like he's trying to make this as unfair of a team as possible. And that's why, I love the trajectory of the program. Like he is like, give me Will Howard, give me Caleb Downs, give me Quinshon Judkins, give me Colson Loveland if he undersupports. Like if these Michigan guys start to say, man, this program's about to get hit by a nuclear strike, let's get out of here. Like they said, hey, let's get some money in the coffers in case these Michigan guys think. So we gotta be ready to go. And the collectives are raising that money right now because again, if these guys hit the market, we're coming after them hard. And again, if you're Colson Loveland, it's a business decision. He's from Idaho. He's not from Michigan. He didn't grow up, wearing a winged helmet. He's a guy that is a superstar tight end, and our tight end room is probably the worst room on the team right now. So you go throw an All-American in there, and all of a sudden you're just like, wow, it's just unfair. Nevada, with the development of the O-line, I'm going to take the super chat real quick. Ohio 7715. Thank you for the 20. Appreciate you, brother. You're in here every night, so you're about to be in the Hall of Fame next to Torah. Any news on James Laurinaitis or the 10th coaching spot? Pumped about Carter. Hopefully he's the start of better O-line recruiting. OHIO. Nevada, do you want to throw in your IO, your typical IO?
IO.
I love it. I think that James is on an audition right now, and I've said this before just because I kind of read the tea leaves where he's on the road every day. He's going to all these schools every day. I think Ryan wants to see if he really wants to do it. Now, I know James implicitly. James is one of the greatest Buckeyes of all time, one of the greatest people of all time. He wants to be a high-level coach. That doesn't mean being a linebacker coach for his whole life. Again, it's kind of like when people told me that Brian Hartline, his dream was to be the wide receiver coach at Ohio State for his entire life. I said, well, I know Brian Hartline really well, and I know that is not his dream. Now, he might say that to people that are dumb, like our beat writers, but in reality, Brian wants to be the head coach one day. Like he wants to be the big cheese. And Urban Meyer always had a great saying. Like when we were sitting around the staff room table, he would say to us, if you don't want to be a head coach, then I should fire you. Like, I don't want you at my table. Everyone in my room should want to be a head coach one day. He wanted everybody to progress to being position coach, coordinator, head coach. He wanted people to have massive ambition. And Brian Hartline has massive ambition, and so does James Laurinaitis. So I know James wants that spot. I think if James got that spot, it would be like a junkyard dog on a steak, basically. It's kind of like Schlegels. Like Schlegels is back in the weight room. Anthony Schlegel is one of the greatest teammates I've ever had. He's the guy that I love. I think he's a guy that is selfless. He's a guy that has already made a very substantial impact in the week that he's been there. And I get that from all angles of people that are in the Woody Hayes, where they say, this guy is insane. This guy is bringing the juice. This guy is developing deep bonds with these players. Because again, something that Urban was fantastic about, and again, Urban, I revere Urban because I worked for him, is you really have to get in, you have to get in waist deep with these kids, man. You have to get in all the way, because if they trust you and they love you, then you can really push them. And when you really push them, it's not always pretty. It's not always like, hey, can you please go hard? Hey, please, can you do this double team block better? Hey, can you run down harder on kickoff? When they trust you, you can get after them good. And that's what Schlegel's really good at. He'll get in with these kids and they'll sit there and be like, man, this guy really cares about me. So when he's when he's MFing me and he's screaming at me, he's trying to get that extra little out of the nook and cranny. He's trying to get that extra little bit of potential out of me. And again, when you do that, it's not always fun. It's not always comfy. It's not always here's your cocoa and your milk and your soft pillow and your nice warm blanket. It's hard. But Schlegs is really good at that because he's from the Urban Meyer School of Pain. The Urban Meyer School of Pain is, just show me the baby. Don't show me all the pain, the labor pains. And again, I love that because I think we need an injection of that urban into the program. And Schlegs is from the Urban Meyer School of Pain where he's going to get it out of these kids now. And there's some kids that have been assigned to him that didn't finish the season well, that didn't hit their potential. And Schlegs is charged with let's get these kids on the right track and get these kids that have a lot of potential into being, all Big Ten-ish type kids, all American type kids. And it's worked out great. Again, like the reviews have been unbelievable. In terms of talking about Carter and O-line recruiting, again, people laugh and people say that this is dumb. But if you guys want to do a homework project tonight, go get on Rivals, go get on 247. Those are the longest existing databases. Go look at our recruiting from 2001. Rivals was founded in 2001, which is my junior year of high school. And go look at the star rankings of the average offensive line class at Ohio State from 2001 until this past year. And then go look at the segments, which was Jim Bowman, Ed Warner, Greg Studwara, Justin Fry. And then go look at who has the highest star rankings. And it's not even close, Greg Studwara. And then go look at who got the most guys from out of state, Greg Studwara. So, again, is Justin, do I need to crucify Justin Fry for our offensive line recruiting? Not really, because we haven't had great crops in Ohio. But at the same token, I don't know if it was Greg Studwara. I don't know if it was Greg Studwara and Urban Meyer. I don't know if it was only Urban Meyer. I don't know what the deal is. But under Greg Studwara, we got a lot of national kids that were 5-star kids. Like Nevada said, Harry Miller was a 5-star kid out of Buford. Nick Petit-Frere was the number 1 tackle in the country. He was rated higher than everyone cries the blues about Jackson Carman, who was a fat turd. And we got Nick Petit-Frere instead of him. Nick Petit-Frere was a better player, a better person, was from Tampa, out of state. So, again, people cry about Jackson Carman. I'm like, dude, Nick Petit-Frere is way better than that kid. He drafted better, played better in the NFL, played better in college, the whole nine. So, you can go back and look at the star rankings and tell me who is the best guy. And again, these aren't my rankings. These are just national rankings that were produced. And like Donnie Jackson, 5-star kid out of Texas. We pulled him away from Texas. And that's hard. That's a fist fight to go get a kid out of Texas to come to Ohio. But we did it. Nevada, your thoughts on James as our 10th coach and also potentially getting better offensive line recruiting?
Yeah, well, I think, like you said, it's tough when there's not a great crop, in state. But look, today was a great day. I mean, there's no, as an Ohio State fan, you should be really excited that we got a guy like Arlo. This was not a guy that was a lock early on in the recruiting process to Ohio State. A lot of people thought he wasn't coming to Ohio State. And I think Justin Fry did a terrific job in terms of getting him. To me, it's a foundational piece. And it's not every day that you land the top offensive lineman in Ohio to come to the Buckeyes. So I'm super, super, super excited about that. As for James Laurinaitis, look, I think this is the types of guys that we want to have around the program, the people that understand what it's like to be a Buckeye. That, James, look, I'm old enough to remember. I remember the day he committed to Ohio State out of, Minnesota high school, 3-star kid. And the thing I was most excited about was his dad was part of the Road Warriors and a big wrestling guy. So I was excited about that. But in terms of football player, nobody was rejoicing over James Laurinaitis coming to Ohio State. And then the guy just turns out to be a 3-time All-American and one of the great Buckeyes, all-time leading tackler for the Rams. So to me, he's the perfect fit. I'm not sure what the holdup is in terms of doing it, but I know Ryan wants to get it right. And as far as I'm concerned, with Ryan Day's offseason that he's had in 2024, he has earned the right to take his time, do it the way he wants, because I think he's been, whatever a perfect score is in darts or bowling. In bowling, I know it's a 300, but in darts, whatever it is, he's playing everything perfectly right now. So he's earned the benefit of the doubt for me. But I'd sure love to see James to be coach number 10, and I really, truly do believe that's going to happen.
Yeah, and again, I try to be very, very careful about promoting a guy who is a former player, wants to get into coaching, because that's always like a natural segue with guys that are out of the NFL. I should be a position coach because Mike Vrabel was and Luke Fickell was and whatever. But like James has the chops for it. He gets what it is. He gets the grind. He's been doing it for, this is year 3 now. I mean, he worked with Marcus for a year at Notre Dame. He's been at Ohio State for a year. You know, again, and I say this, he's 37. He's not some spring chicken. I mean, he's the same age as Gerard Mayo, who's the head coach of the Patriots. So he's ready to roll. And again, like there's nothing more, nothing that drives you more crazy when you're a graduate assistant than, when you know that you could be better than guys that are full-time position coaches. And I'm sure James has had that thought in his last couple of years where he's like, I'm better than this guy. Like Parker Fleming, like James runs circles around Parker Fleming. Like Parker Fleming played quarterback in his small college. And again, not bagging on Parker. Parker was my intern in 2012. But, like James was a guy that played in the National Football League and he covered kickoffs and he covered punts, as a freshman at Ohio State. Like he's forgotten more about special teams than Parker Fleming would ever know. So I'm sure James is sitting there and he's like, I could recruit better than this guy. I could coach better than this guy. I've got more charisma than this guy. And again, that matters. Again, like Brian Hartline, why is he a great recruiter? Because he did it at a high level. He played in the league for a long time. The league stuff adds a lot of cachet to recruiting. Because I was only in the league for 3 years. I didn't have a career anywhere near Brian Hartline's or James Lawrence's. But like kids wanted to know what's it like to play for the Chicago Bears? What's it like to play for Harry Heasan? What's it like to play for the Dolphins? What's it like to get drafted? What's it like to go to the combine? And I could tell these guys, I'm like, look, this is what you need to do. This is how you're good at it. Was I the best player ever? No. But, I knew my deficiencies and I knew that, I could help kids out. And I did. Like I emptied the clip when I was talking to Taylor Decker, Corey Lindsley, Elfline, Jack Mewhort, Norwell. And those guys are all millionaires, all have had long careers, all had really good Ohio State careers. And when I was coaching them, I wanted to tell them every possible trick of the trade, every possible secret, everything that I wish I knew when I was their age, as an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 22-year-old, how to get ready for the NFL, how to get ready for the combine, how to get ready, for a game, what to study on film. Because, I had to teach myself that. And I had to learn it through hard work and being around great NFL coaches. Like I was around Harry Heastand, who's a fantastic coach. Chris Forrester is still the O-line coach for the 49ers. Fantastic coaches that I learned a lot from. And I would just try to dump all of that on those kids' plates. Because again, the thing I could do the best to give back to Ohio State was make sure that these young kids knew everything that I wish I would have known. How to take care of your body, how to train correctly, technical stuff, what to look for in pass protection. Like my tackles, I'd always teach them to read the safeties, look at the safeties. When you're up in your 2-point, where are the safeties at? Find the safeties, because the safeties tell you everything. If the safety's cheating over, there's a good chance there's a corner blitz, or there's a nickel blitz, or there's a Sam blitz. So it's like, I teach them all these little things, and that all adds up. And then these kids get really good and really proficient. And I worked them hard. Like when I was working with Ed Warner, like I worked these kids to death because, I didn't want them to be a guy that's like, man, I'm at the end of my 4 years or my 5 years, and I didn't develop the way I needed to. Because like the one thing that will give you the biggest regret as a coach when you're coaching at a place like Ohio State is when kids get to the end of the line and they're a senior or a 5th-year guy and they don't get drafted or they don't have the career they wanted or for whatever reason. And you're like, man, I should have pushed that kid harder. Man, I should have scraped the little corners of his potential and got him to his full deal. And sometimes, guys like Norwell, they're just misevaluated by the scouting community. Because again, a lot of the scouts and a lot of the GMs have never played football before. And frankly, they're dumb and they don't recognize that, film trumps combine numbers and Senior Bowl performance and all that other trash that these guys use to skew these kids' rankings. Because Norwell was all Big Ten and he was a really good guard and he played against really good D tackles and he frankly shut them down, especially in pass protection. And they ignored all that because he was a stiff kid. He didn't run a great 40, whatever. But when you put the pads on, you put him out there versus Keewan Short, who's a 1st round or a 2nd round pick, all of a sudden he locks him up. So, again, you just try to do all you can to help these guys because the kids deserve to be coached hard. And that's why I'm glad James is back in the building. I'm glad that's why Schlegs is back in the building because you need guys that are going to develop these kids 12 months a year. And like that's the thing about the strength coaches is they have the access to the kids right now when the position coaches are out on the road recruiting. Jeff Rittenhouse, thank you for the 5. Watch Carter Lowe's front foot twitch very fast, which is key to lateral range. Again, Jeff, obviously, you are very astute at offensive line play. Carter's a twitched up dude. He's got really good twitch. He's a guy that moves very lightly. And again, I watch Josh Simmons, and he's kind of the same way. Like Josh has a lot of upside. He's a very twitched up dude. He moves very easily. It's not painful to watch him move. Like Darryl Baldwin, who won a national championship, when he would move, it was painful because he was so stiff. But he got the job done. It wasn't pretty, but he was a gritty kid. He's an engineering major, one of the smartest kids I've ever been around. But he was exceptionally stiff, probably the stiffest player in Ohio State history. But he got the job done. Like Josh Simmons and Carter Lowe, very light movers, very light feet, very easygoing. And a lot of that is genetics. Some of it's training. But that's why I'm excited about Carter because I think he's got a lot of agility and a lot of foot speed. Drew Dozer, the Prophet. Thanks for the deuce. Kirk, do you do any work for 97.1 at the Fan? I do not. And they could have me on whenever they want. I know Anthony Rothman very well. I've been on his show multiple times, but I did a radio spot today for an Ohio-based radio station, and I'm always open to do a spot. But I honestly like doing the podcasts more, just because I get more time to talk and explain stuff and take your questions versus radio spots usually 5 minutes, and there's a commercial before, commercial after, hard stops. And I did some radio work, and it frankly, it's not really worth my time. It's good to promote Buckeye Scoop, but it's not something where I'm like, man, I wish I could do a radio spot today for 5 minutes and not really get into the granular stuff. Because I know a lot of you guys like to learn, and that's something that we pride ourselves on at Buckeye Scoop is we like to explain things in a very easy manner so that people can understand it. Because again, I have people that aren't huge football fans. I have families. I have young kids that watch this. So I try to explain things in a very simple manner because, I'm not out here just so I can hear myself say big words. I'm out here to make stuff easier for you guys to understand and make you guys smarter football fans. I mean, that's something that we pride ourselves on is we want to teach you guys some stuff and answer questions in a way where you're like, wow, that really makes sense. Instead of me saying big words, you're like, wow, Kirk, you're so smart. You say all these big words and nobody understands what you're saying. Because that's my pet peeve about X's and O guys and chalk talk guys is they'll say cover 4, dragon, mint, smoothie, and nobody has any idea what they're talking about. They sound stupid. So we try to break all that down. Nevada, your thoughts on that? Again, I don't like doing radio spots. I like to do it because I like to promote the show and I do it as a favor to people, but I like this format better because I get to really talk to the folks. But your thoughts on that, Nevada?
Yeah, no, it's a great format, like you said, because it enables us to, our number one thing here is, entertain, inform. And, this is the perfect format in terms of doing it. But I got a question for you on something you were talking about earlier. You were talking about pushing the kids. And I just wonder, and I know you haven't really experienced this because you kind of missed the portal era with your coaching career, but how much of a challenge do you think it is for coaches now to be hard, to be tough, to really, go to the walls with kids, knowing that kids can up and portal and leave, and that things are so transportable and so easy for them to do that now? Do you think that changes the way that coaches kind of approach the thing with kids and how they develop?
I think it does to a degree, but I also think that's why you really have to be good at building trust and being honest with kids, because I think kids appreciate honesty. Again, if a kid's going to leave, he's going to leave. I don't think you can change that much. Because again, the quickest way to lose a kid is to lie to him. To lie. I've had conversations ad nauseum with players and agents, and it's like the quickest way to lose to a kid is where you say, hey, oh, well, this is why you didn't play, or oh, this is why you didn't rep, or oh, this is, we wanted to get a look at this guy versus this. And I hear that stuff and I'm like, yeah, they're just lying to you. Like I've sat in that coaching room and it's like when someone's saying like that and you're not getting any reps, and eventually you got to make a business decision. But to me, like you got to have trust with the kids. And again, like when I coached kids, I I wasn't their buddy. I wasn't their friend. I was Coach Barton. Like, I mean, Urban always made sure that we were called Coach. Don't let me hear your players calling you Kirk or Ed or whatever. And so I think if they trust you and you push them and you're trying to do what's best for them, then I'm not worried about the portal. And if they leave, then they're going to leave anyways. And so I think it's a great question because I think that there's this kind of misnomer where people like, oh well, the hardcore, dictators, the Nick Sabans, the Urban Meyers wouldn't survive. But I think that those guys are the most honest guys. Those are the guys that are going to tell you, hey, you got to do this or you ain't going to play. And if you don't want to play, then you can go elsewhere. But it's like, I think it's obviously it's a little bit more delicate now, but I think it encourages you to build trust with your players because if your players trust you, and again, that was something I was really big on. Like I was always very honest with the kids. I was very hard on the kids. And at the end of the season, when they look up and they're 12-0 and they're like, "This is great," and we can't go to a bowl game, but we're undefeated, we're getting rings. Like, then at the end of the day, it's all worth it. Because you're honest with them, you're hard on them. And again, you're not take my word for it. Ask Jack Mewhort about me. Ask Lindsley about me. Ask Pat Elfline about me. Like, I was always honest with them, and I always sacrificed everything to make sure that they had everything they needed in terms of getting them right, making sure they had tip sheets, making sure they were quizzed up on the plays, on blitzes, on fronts. Like, I mean, it was kind of like one of those things where I just didn't stop. I wanted to make sure that these kids, they knew what they were doing so cold that they thought I was the biggest annoyance in the world because I'd ask them something and they'd already done it because that's the way you do it. I mean, I want to make sure that they know tight zone versus every single front, every possible blitz, every possible scheme they could see. Like I want them to know like it's a bad habit. And that was something that I prided myself on is like I wanted our guys to be the most prepared unit in the entire Woody Hayes. Like our O-line is going to be ready for war. They're going to be ready for whatever you throw at them. Doesn't mean they're going to execute it perfectly every time, but you try to minimize mistakes and MAs, and you want your guys to play fast, to play with a lot of confidence. And you can't play football, and especially not offensive line, if you don't know what you're doing, versus the fronts. Because like there's no law that says the defense has to run, a 4-2-5, a nickel, or blitz or not blitz or whatever. Like you never know what you're going to get. And especially that first year with Urban running that power spread, we were getting a million different defenses. And I mean, we never, in 12 weeks that I was there, we would try to project what we were going to get based on, oh, this linebacker coach was at Auburn and we played them in '07 and this is the defense they ran. Like that's kind of how we were doing it because we had no idea how we get defended. And we were wrong every week. It was almost like a joke by the end of the season. But, our kids were confident in their roles and they knew the scheme and they could pick it up and adjust stuff. And that's why we were good. And that's so important on the offensive line and really in all of football. Yeah, Drew Dozer. I'd love to be on the fan more, but they gotta call me. But again, I like our format better because I like to talk to the folks. I like to talk to you guys. And on a radio, there's no questions, there's no chat room, there's no back and forth. And this format is much more near and dear to my heart than being on a radio show. AZ King, what is up, brother? I appreciate you always being on here. Thank you for the 5. That was a week. IO Nevada Buck. I love that. Try again. Now on to the question. What made Harbaugh an elite O-line developer? Nevada, do you want to redo your IO so that we can keep our fan base happy?
IO.
That was fantastic. That was a way better IO. That's like a Carter Lowe style IO, a 5-star NIL Caleb Downs IO. Very good. Appreciate that. I just think that Jim Harbaugh is a tough guy. He's a tough guy. He demands toughness. He demands development. He's got his thumb on that O-line heavy. And he hires good coaches. Sherrod Moore's become a great O-line coach. He had really good O-line coaches at San Francisco, but he honestly reminds me a lot of Urban just because, Jim Harbaugh and Urban, as weird as they are, they're the same guy. They are all football all the time. It's 4th and 1 every minute. And again, like with Urban, like we didn't have a choice. And honestly, a lot of it is, it's not just Jim Harbaugh. It's Jim Harbaugh and Ben Herbert, the strength coach. Like with Urban, it was Urban Meyer and Mickey Marotti. And like I used to tell people, I'm like, look, you could have my German Shepherd Joseph be the O-line coach. And if you have Mickey as the strength coach and Urban as the head coach, that O-line's going to be rocking off the ball. And they're going to be coming off the rock. And that's just what he demands. And I feel like that's what Jim Harbaugh does. And again, it's it's not like it's just some recent 3 year development. It's like his entire career at Stanford, they used to whoop people. I mean, they beat a really good USC team in '07. They were 45-point dogs. They whooped SC up front. You watch them at San Francisco when they had, Alex Boone was on that O line, Mike Upati, Joe Staley, Anthony Davis. I mean, they had 3 first rounders, and they used to maul people with that O line. And again, a lot of it's the same scheme, the same splits, the same everything, and that's just from Jim Harbaugh down. Again, it's the strength coach, it's him, and again, that's why people hate Jim Harbaugh because he's weird and he drinks milk with steak and he wears khakis every day and the same top every day and he's just whatever. But like he's just all football. He tries to make his life as simple as possible. He eats steak and milk every meal and he wears khakis every day because then he doesn't have any thought process. All of his thoughts go into how to make his football team better every single day. And again, like I respect that. Again, and he might have been a cheater, and I'm sure he was a cheater and whatever, but like the guy's a really good football coach. And I think he's a guy that I'm glad that he's leaving Michigan at this point. Benji, thank you for the 10. Any hints on which kids got assigned to Club Schlegel? Is it a mix of freshmen, busts, and troublemakers? What all differentiates them from the rest of the team? Any alphas emerging in the new class? Well, it's not all guys that need developed, but there's some young offensive linemen that need some confidence. And again, like Schlegel's he's not a therapist, but he's got a way of making guys more confident and making them work and working guys hard and getting 2 workouts in a day and that type of stuff. So some young offensive linemen, some defensive ends that needed a little bit more inertia towards their career. I think that like if a guy's a freshman, he's not like one of these guys that's on one of the morning talk shows where they have the drill sergeant guy with the pointy hat come in and scream at the kids that are miscreants. Like he's just a guy that they say, hey, this kid needs a little love and a little, and by love it's like this guy needs a little toughening up, and they assign him to him, and Schlegs is excellent at that. Any alphas emerging in the class? Yeah, Jeremiah Smith. He is the alpha, the omega. He's all that. I mean, JJ is the guy. He's not a talkative guy, but you watch that kid work, man, and he's an absolute, he's Optimus Prime. Because everyone calls Megatron Calvin Johnson, and I think Calvin Johnson's the best receiver that's ever lived. I practiced with him and played with him in Detroit. I've never seen. There's never a better football player than that guy. 6'6", runs a 4.3. I mean, he would be diving for balls during a worthless summer workout that most people would let hit the ground. He didn't let any ball hit the ground. So that's my guy forever. I think that JJ's Optimus Prime at this point. Nevada, thoughts on Schlegs and alphas emerging in the new class?
IO. First of all, yes, Schlegel, yeah, exactly. We don't want to make it sound like Schlegel's getting assigned to the island of misfit toys, and he's got, like,
exactly.
working on that. It's not like that at all. Even though those Sally Jesse Raphael shows where they had like the guy run in with the drill instructor thing, those were fun episodes, some of my favorites. But no, it's not that with Schlegel. He's a confidence builder. He's, for anybody that's going through kind of maybe having a little bit of a confidence issue, he's a great position coach in terms of doing that right now. As for the alphas, obviously JJ is an obvious one, but Peoples and Houston are guys. We were excited about them before they got here. I'm just as excited, if not more so excited about them after they've got here. So we've got a very, very special incoming class and some guys that I think that are going to be immediate impact, and that's hard to do. But they came in early, they came in right, they came in shape, and I think you're going to see guys that are going to contribute this year. This great Ohio State football team, and that's really saying something.
Yeah, I totally agree. But yeah, Club Schlegs, that's a good name. We should keep that, Club Schlegs. Yeah, Schlegs is gonna take these guys boar hunting and shooting guns probably, and they're gonna have to go gut some poor little boar with their bare hands, and that'll probably make them tough. I would never do that, but that's Schlegs' thing. Schlegs is a different cat, man. He used to shoot squirrels in the parking lot with a bow and arrow, and I never understood that because I don't know why you got to shoot a squirrel with a bow and arrow, but Schlegs did, and again, God bless him. And I think he used to put them in AJ's locker or Bobby's locker. Like he'd hang like a dead squirrel on the hook, like where you put your shirts. Because Schlegs, like I said, Schlegs is a different cat. I'm like, don't do that to my thing, dude. I don't want to see a dead squirrel on my thing. but Schleggs is hilarious. D Sunday, thank you for the 5. When you talk about Ryan Day being a great quarterback developer, is it that he's great at technique or mentally understanding the scheme? What is more important? That is a fantastic question. God bless. I want to say all of the above because, like, the technical thing is so important. Like drilling these guys, making sure the footwork's tight, making sure the mechanics are tight. Because again, like if you guys watched the Orlando Pace interview, if you guys haven't watched the Orlando Pace interview, probably the best interview I've ever done. Obviously, he talked about training technique. When your body is in the fourth quarter and you're exhausted, failing, fatigued, you have to fall back on your technique. And if you have that muscle memory, then you can keep that technique tight. Whereas if you get tired, it gets a little sloppy. But I think that, Ryan is really good at the technical stuff. Again, you see the way that Justin Fields developed. You see CJ Stroud year over year getting much better. But the mental thing is just really important because football is such a mental game, especially at quarterback where you have to read coverages. Defenses are very sophisticated. You have to deal with a lot. I mean, you got to check blitzes. You have to change protections. You have to have a very quick clock in your head to get rid of the ball so you don't get smoked, especially if they're bringing a zero blitz where there's one more guy than you can block. You got to get rid of that ball fast. So I think Ryan is excellent at all of that. And again, the proof's in the pudding when you look at the way Dwayne Haskins took off as a first-year starter, and then Justin, and then CJ. Kyle McCord, I felt like got better over the season. Kyle just doesn't have the talent that the other guys had. But Will Howard is going to be a great case study because I think Will Howard has as much talent as anybody. But he needs Ryan Day and Bill O'Brien to really dig that talent out and really highlight it. And I think, again, Will Howard's never seen weapons like he's going to have at Ohio State. He's never seen a guy like Emeka, Trey Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, J.J. Smith, Ennis Tate. He's never seen anything like that. So that'll be really exciting to see what he can do with those weapons. But I think that quarterback, the mental part, I think is more important because playing quarterback is such a roller coaster. You have to be so strong mentally, especially in a city like Columbus where fans are just brutal. And we have this section of, 1% of our fans that are just the most miserable human beings in the world, the dumbest human beings in the world. And they harass these kids and go after them. And, you got to be tough to endure that. Because again, playing football at Ohio State is not for everybody. And this is coming from a guy that played against Florida. We lost, got smoked. People get very nasty, very negative. And you got to be able to absorb that and just ignore it and keep progressing and getting better. And some kids can't. Some kids, frankly, they like to read the mean tweets and they get in a dark place and it's tough, So, I think that the mental part is important, or probably more important than the technical part. Poohbeard12, appreciate you, brother. Thanks for being a Scoop Ultra member. Again, our Scoop Ultra members got to ask a free question to Orlando Pace. We had a bunch of those, and that was fantastic. So our next interview will be announced shortly. I'm locking down some more former players to come on the show. So we will have Scoop Ultra members get to ask a free question to a former player, and they're all stars. Like we don't have any average players on. It's all superstars like Orlando. So we're real excited about that. So thank you for the 10. With football actually being king with our new AD president, any chance they could influence Ohio in actually allowing high school spring football? That is a great question. I think this is part of the talent discrepancies in the South. I agree. Now, I don't know if we ever will do that because, again, the biggest opponents of it are smaller school athletic directors that say, well, if you do spring football, then our baseball team's going to be diminished and our track team's going to be diminished. And, we won't be able to have any good pitchers because they'll be at football practice. So, it's kind of like a catch-22 where it just kind of goes round and round. Because to me, I'm like, well, how can Georgia and Florida and Texas and every other state in the country do it? But for some reason we can't. But that's always the debate. I think, if you wanted to do kind of a, like an agreement where you say, hey, okay, we'll do like Division III football in spring football. They never wear pads. They do a lot of assignment check, a lot of drill work, but it's not padded practices. So there's obviously less violence. There's less injuries. But it's great for assignment check. It's great for training your skill guys, your receivers, throwing and catching the ball, blocking versus bags and sleds and whatever. I think that would be a nice kind of compromise between the people that are against it and for it. Whereas opposed to like, in like Florida and Georgia, they have like fully padded practices. They have a spring game where they usually scrimmage at another local school. And that's like the optimal solution. But for whatever reason, there's like old heads that are on the hill that say, oh, we can't do spring football in Ohio. And I think it destroys our development because, every school in Georgia and Florida, they get 15 extra practices plus a scrimmage in the spring, where they get more development and they also get more exposure to college coaches. Cause like a lot of these college coaches are like, oh man, I can go watch this really good offensive lineman in pads in a scrimmage. Oh, I'll do that all day instead of watching these dumb camps where you're like Ohio State football camps are, they're okay, but they're just, it's kind of dumb. You watch the guys run around and then they do one-on-one pass rush. And that's really the only competitive drill. But if you're in Georgia and Florida and you're a coach, you can go watch these guys play a real game in the spring. And, when there's a superstar like David Sanders, like you're going to see Justin Fry there watching the scrimmage. Like you're going to watch these guys play a real padded game that counts, because again, like you can't be half stepping in a football game. Like you got to be ready to go and strap up. So if David Sanders is out there, like it's going to be, he ain't going 50%. He's trying to look good. And I'm sure like if you're there and Kirby Smart's there and Ryan Day's there, like nothing juices you up harder than seeing those guys on the sideline and they're there to watch you. But yeah, I think it does have a big deal with the talent discrepancies, along with just the flight of, we're the Rust Belt now. We've lost a lot of jobs. A lot of people have moved to Charlotte, to Atlanta, to the South. So again, it's kind of a double whammy when you talk about that. Nevada, your thoughts on spring football in Ohio? I'm sure if you were the head of OSHA, you probably would approve it tomorrow because I think it would help Ohio State dramatically. But your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've heard the arguments, and I've heard the arguments from people that I really respect and have a lot of. So I'm not saying that the opinions are dumb or misplaced or whatever. But when you look at what the other states are doing, when you look at the great states in terms of college or high school football right now, and it's Florida, Georgia, Texas, California, Louisiana. I mean, they all have something in common. And then you look at states that were formerly great states in terms of, like the greatest states, Ohio. I mean, Pennsylvania. When I was growing up, Pennsylvania used to crank out the players. I mean, you used to always try to get the best players from Pennsylvania, and now it's like, man, it's hard to find great players in Pennsylvania. So to me, I think we're falling way behind in terms of not doing it. I think it's a no-brainer, as you rightly pointed out. Somehow, some way, California continues to turn out great baseball players, as does Florida. Yet they have spring football. So I mean, Ohio's just kind of get with the times. I think any of the arguments are kind of old and tired, and I think they've got to figure it out because I think it's really putting our players at a distinct disadvantage.
Well, yeah, and like the hard part is like, it's so different than the summer. Like in the summer, if you're a top-notch baseball player, you're playing summer ball all summer, you're traveling to tournaments every weekend, you maybe leave on a Thursday. So you're already missing some football workouts. A lot of times football workouts are Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. You might have a couple 7-on-7 scrimmages. So like you already have to make that decision. So why would you do it any differently in the spring where, like I would want my kids to stay active. Like if I was a football coach and I had a kid who was a really good track star, good shot putter, good pitcher, good first baseman, whatever. Like I'd want him to stay active, but like, there's always going to be days in the schedule where there's not a conflict where you're like, okay, here's a day where you can come football practice and then you can go hit, if you're like a first baseman, you can go hit the batting cage after football practice. Like you're going to survive. You're not going to die. But I just think that like the specialization has killed some of these kids because they're just so obsessed with like the one sport. And again, like the athletic directors have this thing where, oh, well, God, we're not going to be able to field a baseball team in Division 6 because, they're going to be playing football or whatever. So I don't know. I think it's silly, but it is what it is. Jared Haddle, what's up, brother? The king of Chillicothe is weighing in. Thank you for the 10. Kirk, have you thought about jumping back into coaching? No. Personally, I think you could be an asset. I did it for 3 years. I loved it. But I love my time and my family way more. And again, like this is like if I'm jonesing to talk football and watch film, I can do it with you guys. I can do it from my house. And when I turn the camera off, I get to go do whatever I want with my kids and my wife and enjoy myself. And again, like with coaching, like I don't like being enslaved. And like you're chained to the desk at the Woody Hayes. You're going to high schools all the time. and again, these guys make a lot of money, but like, money and time are kind of tied. And it's like, you can make good money and not be chained to a desk at the Woody Hayes every day, not be missing all your kids' hockey practices or football practices or games or recitals. Because again, when you're a football coach, that's it. That's your life. Like your wife there's literally a term called a football widow, where the wives just are literally kind of, hey, you got to go take care of everything. I got to go be a football coach. I got to go work 20 hours a day in the building, and I got to go recruit some kid that's going to tell me to go F off and go to Clemson. And, and like I did it for 3 years and I liked it, but man, it's just, for me, I love my life. I love my free time. I love to be able to be around my kids. And when you're a coach, you don't really get to do that. You might make a lot of money, but you're just not around. And you'll wake up when you're 70 years old and dying, and you'll be like, man, I really didn't get to do much except go recruit some kid from, Texas who ended up going to A&M or Georgia or whatever. And I missed all my kids' stuff. And it's just not my life, And again, this has been a godsend because I get to talk football. I get to study film. I get to, do all kinds of Ohio State stuff, but I have freedom. So thank you guys for allowing that. Thank you guys for tuning in for that, because it's way better than being chained to a desk all day. Jared Haddle, thank you for the 5. Also, why would Michigan hire more if he could turn around and get caught up in the scandal? No doubt he was involved with the Stallions. That is the billion-dollar question to me, is like, how do you hire a guy who is complicit in the whole thing? How is he not going to get smashed? Like, to me, it's just like, I don't know. Like, I mean, the DC got out of there. The tight ends coach, Harbaugh, got out of there, because I think Harbaugh was the guy that was following all the money. And then Jim Harbaugh got out of there. So you hire a guy who's probably going to have to absorb the entire blow of the nuclear blast, because he's the only guy left standing. But Nevada, your thoughts on them hiring Sean Moore? Obviously, it was kind of a no-brainer just because he beat Ohio State and he did well enough as the the acting head coach. But man, that's like, how does he not know everything that's going on? Because he did know.
Well, he did know, but it's not about what we all know that he knew. It's about what they can prove. And if they don't have a direct link to him, via emails or whatever, some kind of electronic trail, that they're not going to be able to trace it back to him. I'm not sure if they can or they can't. But look, it was a no-brainer choice. We all knew this would be the head coach. This gives them a chance at continuity. It gives them a chance of keeping their team together. It's the path of least resistance. And for him, it's a no-brainer. I mean, he's getting paid $6 million a year to be the head coach of Michigan at age 37 or whatever it is. So what's the worst thing that can happen to him? Is that he gets fired in a couple of years and he's banked more money than he ever dreamed that he would, and he goes off and he's at DC somewhere else. So it's kind of a no-lose proposition for him and no-brainer for Michigan. And it doesn't matter who they're going to bring in there, because it's going to be bad. And we remember how bad Michigan was just a few years ago. That's where they're going to be back to being irrelevant, is what they are.
Yeah.
I've never seen a team have a shorter honeymoon in the history of college football than Michigan. They win this national championship, and then within 2 weeks, it's all fallen apart and all forgotten, and we're on to 2024. So sucks to be them.
It really does. Yeah, it's good to be a Buck. Mike Antonio, thanks for being a Scoop Ultra member. Again, appreciate all you Scoop Ultra members. That money goes right in to pay it forward to take care of our veterans. So thank you, my friend. Thank you for the 10. Fellow Bucks, O-Pace equals great. Watched late yesterday. I'm glad you appreciate that. Again, I love Orlando. He's my hero. He's been a guy that I've really gotten to know over the last 15, 20 years-ish since I've been an Ohio State Buckeye. And he's just a great human being, a great father, great husband, and obviously the greatest player in Ohio State history. He's in every Hall of Fame, all-century team. So if you guys didn't catch my interview with Orlando, he actually talks about Carter and breaks his film down. So check that out. I'll probably cut that up and put that on our YouTube. Y'all defended Ryan Day. Remember, we live in a punitive society. I totally agree. Fans, quote, fanatics. I love that you spell that out, because, again, there's some people that don't know that fan stands for fanatics, and fanatics are crazies. Will not be happy until we beat the team up north and win the big, just how it is. Well, I get it. I mean, trust me, like, losing to Michigan is completely unacceptable. I totally understand that. I understand the angst, the anger. But, they cheated to the last 3 years and maybe even this year. And I think that the trajectory of the program this year has never been higher, other than maybe that 14 team where we had everybody back. But we've got a loaded team this year. I think Ryan is on the hunt. He's ready to get better. And I think that this is going to be a massive year for Ohio State. I'm excited to see He goes on against Bill O'Brien, who's a fantastic offensive mind. He's a guy that is going to make the guys sit up straight in the meeting room. I think that party time's over now that he's here. And Ryan can actually go be a head coach for once instead of, you know, loitering over every aspect of the offense. I think he's got a guy that he trusts that's going to do a good job. So again, I'm excited about the trajectory and Ryan. But yeah, of course we're not going to be happy till we win the big and beat Michigan. That kind of goes without saying. The Korech, thanks to the deuce. What's your favorite trust story? I've got a lot of those. Bobby Carpenter told the story about the Penn State game in '05 where we were forced to land in Harrisburg because there was like a tropical depression over State College and it was too violent and we couldn't land. So we had to land in Harrisburg, which is, a little ways out of the way, but we had to land there and get on the buses and whatever. And it was a miserable trip. We ended up losing the game. I ended up getting hurt. But I remember, we had to get on a bus for like 2 hours to get to State College from Harrisburg, or 90 minutes. It was a long time. And I remember we get on this bus and, this is old school. They had a DVD player and they had like little TVs that were folded over the things and you could watch the whatever movies put on. And I'll never forget, like they said, hey, does anybody have a DVD that they want to watch? And Nick Mangold, who I love to death, said, oh, I got one. And he handed Boondock Saints to Tress and Bob Tucker. God rest Bob Tucker's soul. He's passed away. Bob Tucker was our director of football operations. He was great. But Tuck puts in Boondock Saints. And if you guys haven't seen Boondock Saints, it's one of the most violent, lewd movies in history. I mean, they say the F word like 800 times. They say everything known to man. There's exceptional violence. And I love the movie because it's like one of my favorite movies. But like, Ellen Trussell is on the bus. Jim Trussel's on the bus. Jim Bowman's on the bus. Like back then, the wives didn't travel except for Ellen. And, Ellen and Jim don't really swear. And they always got the turtlenecks up to here. And we're watching this movie and it is insanely violent, insanely graphic, and insanely bad language. And I'm like, this is hilarious. This is like the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. I'm sitting like 5 seats behind Tress. And then, we get to, when we're in Harrisburg and we're getting ready to leave the airport, the gates can't open. So whatever reason, there's somebody that can't open the gates, or we can't find the guy that opens the gates. So we're sitting at this gate for like 30 minutes and Bobby Carpenter loses his mind. And he's in the back and he's like saying like all the, like I'm sitting by Rob Sims and Doug Dadish, and we're like literally laid across the aisles because, you're in a big bus and there's like 30, the guys that are the starters on bus one, I was on bus one. And we're like, our feet are like laying across the rows. So we're all like laying down, sleeping, kind of resting or whatever. And like Bobby's back there and he's like yelling, I thought we were the class of college football. This is like complete like BS. I mean, he's like going like crazy, because Bobby's kind of crazy. And like, I'm just sitting there and I'm like, this is hilarious. I'm sitting there, I take my earbuds out because I'm listening to music. I was like, this is great. Bobby's going nuts. And so all of a sudden, like I'm laying across the seats, Robbie Sims is laying across the seats, Dad is laying across the seats. Jim Trussell jumps over all of us like a ninja over the aisles. And he jumps back there and I'm like, oh, that's about to be amazing. And I hear him say to Bobby, if you don't shut the F up, and Truss never swore. So when he drops the F bomb, it's like, it really means something. If you don't shut the F up, I'm going to like send you home or something like crazy like that. And I was like, oh boy, Truss is all heated. And I'm just like, that was like amazing. So that was like my favorite Trussell story ever because, to hear Truss say the F word, it's like hearing Mr. Rogers say the F word. But Bobby, like that was like the most entertaining trip ever. And it sucked that we lost because it would have been a way better story if we had won. But like Bobby just lost his mind and, and he was just going on and Tress was not having it. And I don't think Bobby spoke for the rest of the trip, which was amazing because Bobby loves to talk and he never would shut up. And so after that, he was like a church mouse, which was great because Tress like completely smacked him. So that's my favorite Tress story. Nevada, do you have a favorite Tress story?
IO.
There you go. That's perfect. Sean Rollins, thank you for the 10. Oh my God. I love you. Is that going to be your new response now? Is this going to be a one-man show and you're going to be it's going to be Kirk and the IO show from going on? Do you want me to change your logo from being the state of Nevada with a bucket, just put IO over there?
IO.
Oh God, CJ in the offense killed it the last time. Mm. Kind of flipped the same. Do you think it'll be better this year? I think CJ CJ's got a lot of upside, man. He's the guy that's going to be he's got, like we talked Nevada, we were talking about today, how much is he going to make? He killed it last year, kind of rolled and flipped, it seemed. Do you think it'll be different? I'm trying to get the gist of your question, but I think that CJ is going to be, the richest player in NFL history when his deal comes up. But it'll be interesting to see what he does. Nevada, do you have anything other than IO to add to CJ's prolific career?
He's gonna make. You're right. He's gonna make $1 billion.
I mean,
He's
he
the face
literally
of
might own an
franchise.
NFL team by the time he's done, because he's like, if Mahomes is worth 500 million, I mean, CJ's 20 years old, 21 years old. Like, what's he gonna be worth when he re-ups in 5 years?
Yeah, he should. If he dated Taylor Swift, man, they could definitely buy an NFL team together.
I mean, he might as well date Lauren Sanchez or Jeff Bezos' ex-wife at this point.
True.
But yeah, I think CJ is gonna. I mean, that kid he's a rocket ship, and it's amazing that he got past them by the Carolina Panthers, because what a screw up that was. Because Bryce Young, and now again, CJ had a better O line, but the talent wasn't close. Again, I don't know. Like, Bryce Young's O line was so bad that it's hard to totally crucify him. But man, like, what a miss. I mean, CJ, the thing about CJ is he's much bigger and much more sturdy than Bryce Young is. And again, if I'm an NFL GM, other than total talent and ability and intelligence and ability to read a defense, like, size is humongous, because you got to understand, like, the defensive ends in the NFL are so big and they're so fast and they're so violent. Like, you have to be able to absorb those hits. Like, that's why guys like Ben Roethlisberger play for like 18 years in the league, because he's humongous. These little guys, they get killed and they get hurt all the time. And like, it's tough to survive when you're playing Nick Bosa and Myles Garrett and some of these guys, because those guys, when they hit you, it stings and you might not get up. Let's go. No regrets. Thank you for the 10. Appreciate you, my man. Does Michigan admin know something we don't? So obviously, Sharon Moore knew about the cheating syndicate. Just look at the sideline interaction. Why did they make him the new head coach? Well, I think it was one of those things where, he had some success last year. Obviously, he beat us. And he also is like, hey, this is like a lottery ticket, 5 years, 5.5, 6 million a year. So he's made $30 million, where he was an O-line coach 2 years ago. He's coordinator this year. And he probably knows that the impact is coming, but it's not going to affect his pocketbook. Now, it might affect his ability to win and be competitive if they get a scholarship reduction or sanctions or bowl bans or whatever. But, he's made a bunch of money. Like, he's set for life now. So, somebody had to take the job, and why not him? Why not a guy who's in-house, try to keep the program together? Again, the interesting thing for him is Jim Harbaugh is his biggest advocate, his biggest fan, and Jim Harbaugh took his strength coach, took his DC, took his tight end coach, Jay. So there's kind of like that little bit of a raid right now where those guys are leaving, and Sharon's going to go hire a new line coach and a new DC. So it'll be interesting to see the amount of staff turnover that Michigan has, because a lot of times if you hire a big-time DC, he wants to bring in some of his own guys. So there might be some other guys that are at risk leaving Michigan, because again, like with Jim Knowles, we hired Perry Eliano. Ryan Day kind of did it like bass backwards, where he hired Perry Eliano and he hired Tim Walton, and then he hired Jim Knowles. You hired Jim Knowles, but like, Jim Knowles has to have some say on who's on his staff, which is why Perry Eliano got whacked and Matt Gariani came in as a safeties coach, because like Jim Knowles, he trusts Matt Gariani implicitly to know his defense, know how he wants it run. And really, like, if Ryan could have a do-over, he probably would have had Matt Gariani not come in as an analyst and have him come in as a safety coach from day one. Nevada, your thoughts on Sharon Moore being the Michigan coach, and will they get smacked?
Yeah, they're going to get smacked. He was the obvious choice. But one of the things that I want to point out, and I thought this was interesting, even though it's not exactly a mirror situation, because, when Meyer left Ohio State, you took some time off, then went to an NFL team. I think it's interesting that Harbaugh's kind of looting Michigan on the way out. I mean, taking the strength and conditioning guy with him. I mean, it'd be like if Meyer had taken Mickey with him to Jacksonville.
Yeah.
It's like it's kind of interesting the way that this thing's going, because it really, we've used the analogy about rats deserting the sinking ship. That really is what Harbaugh's doing here, because he's looking at it, he's going, I know it's going to be bad. I know they're going to get hammered. I'm going to take my guys with me, and we're going to go. And I don't care what happens to Michigan when I leave them, because otherwise, I mean, Meyer was not going to do that. He wasn't going to take Mickey with him. He could have,
Yeah.
but he wasn't going to do it. And I think the differences between the two are pretty stark, and it indicates to me that Harbaugh knows exactly what's going to happen to Michigan, and he's trying to give as many of those guys as possible a soft landing, because it's not going to be pleasant to be a Wolverine going forward.
Yeah. Yeah, and Urban really was cognizant of his reputation at Ohio State and his legacy at Ohio State, and that's the big reason why he didn't take the Texas Longhorns job, is because if he wants to go take that job, he had to taken Corey Dennis, he had to flip Quinn Ewers, who ended up flipping anyways, and he had to taken Mickey Marotti, had taken Mark D'Antoni. He's not going there unless he has his whole staff. Now in the NFL, it's different because you have to get NFL guys. You got to get Trent Baalke as your GM. He brought Schlegs. Schlegs was just, a guy that was basically working for the Fan, doing the morning juice, made him a strength coach. But he didn't raid Ryan Day's coaching staff. Because again, if you do that, it doesn't look good in the eyes of Columbus. People think you're being disloyal. Oh, you take Mickey Marotti, then people literally would hate Urban Meyer. So, I think that, that played an effect where Jim Harbaugh just doesn't care. He's like, hey, if I'm Jim Harbaugh and I talk to Ben Herbert and I talk to Jay Harbaugh and I talk to, Minter, the DC, I'm saying, hey guys, you might want to come with me to Los Angeles, because like I said, I keep saying the nuclear bomb is coming, and we have it on the radar, and you can get out of here before it hits. But we're gonna leave Sean behind because he's gonna get a big bump and be the head coach and whatever. But I'd get out of there while the getting was good. Sean, I'm going to give this one more crack because my contact wasn't flaring up, but I can get this one. Thank you again for the 10. CJ, the offense killed it. And then last year, it kind of flipped the defense. Do you think it'll be even this year? I think it will be even this year. I think our defense is going to be really good. But I think our offense with Bill O'Brien is going to be equally as good. So I think for Ryan Day, this will be the most balanced team we've seen since 2019. 2019, we have an exceptional offensive line. We had Justin Fields, Garrett Wilson, Olave. And our defense was led by Chase Young, Okuda. So that was the most balanced team Ryan's ever had. That's the best team Ryan's ever had. I mean, it was a game where, we lost that Clemson game where, Olave he screwed up the route, didn't have the right read. Justin threw it to the wrong spot, threw the pick. But this is going to be a lot like the 19 team in terms of overall balance. Pooh Beard 12, thank you for the 10. We have the talent on the O-line, but it's all coaching. You can't tell me that UW's O-line, Joe Moore winner, was more talented, star ranking than ours. What will Bob bring and add to what Fry does? See, I disagree. Like the Joe Moore Award should be handed out after the national championship game, because again, they've missed. And I love the guys that run that. I know a lot of guys that are in the Joe Moore Award, but Washington did not have a better offensive line than Michigan last year. It wasn't even close. They got dominated up front by Michigan. I just, again, they hand these out. Michigan won it 2 straight years, basically because they beat Ohio State. And then Michigan showed up, 3 years ago, and they played Georgia and they got absolutely destroyed, Aiden Hutchinson's year. And then last year they played TCU and they got absolutely destroyed. So the Joe Moore Award has no stock to me. I know that it's a cute trophy and everything, but they should hand that out after the national championship, when all the damage is done and you can really figure out who had the best line. Because this past year, Michigan had the best offensive line, in my opinion. But I don't know. Bob, I think, is going to be hard on the offensive line. He's going to be hard on Justin Fry. He's going to develop him. Again, because he's got the credentials to do it. He's been in the league for a long time. So I'm excited to see what he can do. Brian Legree, thank you for the 5. Michigan strength and conditioning coach says he's staying, and the only coach that's leaving is Jesse and Jay. Well, that's interesting. So, that's a new development, because that was the big rumors that Herbert was leaving for the Chargers. So maybe they threw him the bag and they gave him $1.2 million to stay as a strength coach at Michigan. Again, if I was a strength coach, I would prefer to be in college, just because you can push the kids harder than you can in the NFL. But that's an interesting development. Appreciate you, Brian. I know you're a Michigan guy, but thank you for always tuning in. Nevada, let's wrap this thing up. Great show today. Appreciate all you guys tuning in. Your thoughts on Carter Lowe, Michigan, and everything else we talked about today.
Michigan sucks. Carter Lowe is great. and life is really, 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 really good to be an Ohio State fan right now. And I honestly can say from the bottom of my heart that this is the most excited I've been during an off season I think ever in my lifetime of following Ohio State football. I'm so excited for winter conditioning, for spring football, for summer, for fall. I can't wait. I take one little exception with you about the balanced team. I think this is going to be an unbelievable offense, but I think this is going to be a historically good defense in 2019. I think this will be the best defense since '73, and that's saying something. So it's going to be a great year to be a Buckeye fan. Buckle up.
Good
IO.
deal. Love it. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I hope you guys having a great Saturday. Carter Lowe is a Buckeye. Huge get by Ryan Day and Justin Fry. Great job, staff. Enjoy your Saturday. If you guys enjoy this content, please leave us a like. Click subscribe. Also, click that little alert bell. Those are huge for us. So thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you for all the great questions, the great super chats. Again, you guys bring the heat every day. And this is a great show because of you guys. So thank you. Again, I hope you guys have a great Saturday. The basketball Bucks are getting ready to get tuned up. So get ready to tune into that. Big NFL day tomorrow. We're going to go early. We're going to go before the games kick off because I know you guys don't watch these big football games. So we appreciate you guys. We will send a little alert out around 2-ish o'clock so we can knock something out before Championship Sunday. Hope you guys have a great Saturday. Thank you so much, Buckeye Nation. And thank you, Scoop family. Go enjoy the rest of your day. Go Bucks.